Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Parujagacharya, Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. And Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parujagacharya, Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Just give me a second here. We seem to have lost my place. We did 34, did 35, 36. Top of page, oh, you don't have the same books. It's, yeah, text 30, 36 of chapter 10. So you can find it, you know how to find it from at the top they should have the, what chapter and verse it is. Top of each page in the middle. It's page 453, 454 of the big book. And you'll be chapter 10 entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Not on the floor. Not on the floor. Sorry. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 28th day of April, 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 10 entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. And we're on text number 36, which begins our reading on the top of page 454 in most of your books. Okay. Dyutam Chalayatam Asmi Dyutam Chalayatam Asmi Tejasvinam Aham Tejasvinam Aham Jayo Asmi Vyavasayosmi Jayosmi Vyavasayosmi Sattvam Sattvavatam Aham Dyutam Chalayatam Asmi Tejasvinamaham Jayosmi Vyavasayosmi Sattvam Sattvavatamaham Dyutam Chalayatam Asmi Tejasvinamaham Jayosmi Vyavasayosmi Sattvam Sattvamatamaham 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 Dyutam Chalayatam Asmi Tejasvinamaham Jayosmi Vyavasayosmi Sattvam Sattvamatamaham. Anyone want to try on this side? No. She's been coming here for 10 years. She's never chanted the verse once. Okay. Translation. I am also the gambling of cheats, and of the splendid I am the splendor. I am victory, I am adventure, and I am the strength of the strong. And this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna. Purport. There are many kinds of cheaters all over the universe. Of all cheating processes, gambling stands supreme and therefore represents Krishna. As the supreme, Krishna can be more deceitful than any mere man. The unfortunate commentator who wants to cheat Krishna and the public by saying that there is something greater than Krishna is cheated by Krishna, and the commentator cannot understand Krishna after any length of time. If Krishna chooses to deceive a person, no one can surpass him in his deceit. His greatness is not simply one-sided, it is all-sided. Among the victorious, he is victory. He is the splendor of the splendid. Among the enterprising and industrious, he is the most enterprising, the most industrious. Among adventurers, he is the most adventurous, and among the strong, he is the strongest. When Krishna was present on earth, no one could surpass him in strength. Even in his childhood, he lifted Govardhan Hill. No one can surpass him in cheating, no one can surpass him in splendor, no one can surpass him in victory, no one can surpass him in enterprise, and no one can surpass him in strength. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. Just one note before we begin on this whirring sound you hear. This is our double exhaust fans that help protect us from any contamination in the air. I don't have to define what that is. So it's an extra protection just to let you know. Okay, so in this chapter, Krishna, there's actually basically two sections to this chapter. This is called the opulence of the Absolute. And Krishna has already spoken of himself earlier in the chapter as the one who's the source of everything, who pervades everything. In other words, he's already defined himself as what we commonly call God. The one who is the creator and the master of everything. And his friend Arjuna, it's a very dramatic scene. I don't know how familiar you are with the Bhagavad Gita, but this is spoken on a battlefield before a big war. And Arjuna is the protagonist of this battle. It's part of a much, much larger book called the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is a history of India, very long. And the protagonist, Arjuna, is one of the main protagonists, and he's part of 5 brothers, a family of 5 brothers, who were cheated out of their kingdom. Krishna mentions here he's gambling. So they were cheated out of their kingdom, and they were very righteous and virtuous. They were all devotees of God, of Krishna. And so the Mahabharata, the main plot in the Mahabharata, is how this battle finally takes place for the rule of the earth. And is virtue personified in the form of Arjuna's elder brother, Yudhishthira, going to rule? Or are the cheaters who usurp the kingdom going to rule? And so ultimately this dialogue here takes place when all the armies, millions of soldiers and horses and elephants are all assembled on the battlefield about to fight. And Arjuna wants to see who's on the other side. And Krishna has very amazingly taken the role of his chariot driver. So they come. So Arjuna says to Krishna, "Please take my chariot between the two armies, in no man's land, between, so I can see who wants to fight." And this is the first chapter. And he sees on the other side his old friends, relatives. He sees his teacher on the other side, his one who took the role of his grandfather when they were orphaned, Bhishma Dev, and all kinds of friends and relatives. And he gets cold feet. He's a great warrior. He's already fought many battles and won. But suddenly he doesn't want to fight because on the other side are those who he loves and who are his intimate friends, relatives like that. So that's the setting of the first chapter. And then at the beginning of the second chapter, he changes the dynamic between himself and Krishna. Instead of being a friend who you can argue with back and forth, which is what he was doing, he says, "Krishna, you're now my spiritual master. You're my guru. I see you as the source of all knowledge. And so I surrender. Now tell me really what's best for me." And this word dharma comes up. Dharma is now an English word. It's definitely entered into the English dictionary. And dharma has different connotations. It actually comes, the essential meaning of this word dharma it has its root in the Sanskrit word dri, which means the essential quality of something. Everything has its dharma, just like we're looking at these chairs over here. Chair has a dharma. When you sit on it, it has to support you. It can be all varieties of chairs, soft chairs, sofas, everything. But it has to do that, right? If you sit on the chair and it collapses, it's a chair in name only. It's not meaning its dharma, right? So everything has a certain dharma. The dharma of sugar is to be sweet. The dharma of salt is to be salty. If you see a white powder, it looks like, oh, this must be sugar, but you taste it. No, it's not sugar, it's salt. It doesn't have that essential quality of sugar. So what's our essential quality? And this comes to to the real basic question which Krishna speaks to at the beginning of the Gita. Who are we? First we have to determine what we are. It's easy enough to determine what a chair is. It's very simple. But we're very complex. We have, first of all, we keep changing. We grow at different ages. Our mind changes. Our desires change. Our body certainly changes. So what is it that doesn't change about us? And Krishna, he points to that essential question at the beginning of his instruction. And he says, what doesn't change is our consciousness. We are conscious beings throughout our life. And we say, at every stage of our lives, we can talk about my hand, my foot, my body, right? My mind. And then you go, well, who's the possessor? Who is that one who possesses these things? Which throughout the world, throughout our life, we can say the same thing. Everything else is changing, but that one who possesses it doesn't change. And that's called in Sanskrit the Atma, or the real self. And Krishna makes the point there, and this we can't tell from any investigation, that we're eternal. This is very important. That we as spirit, this is spirit, consciousness, Atma, we're never born and we never die. Well, the implication there is obvious. Reincarnation. That just as we change bodies during this life. All of us can remember when we were probably 8, 9 years old, right? And we had different thoughts, different feelings, certainly had a different body, much younger for me, very much younger. But then it changes, and then you grow into an adolescent and then so forth. So the body keeps changing and you're the same person. So Krishna says, a very important verse there, he says, Najayate mriyate vakadachan, nayam bhutva bhavidavana bhuya, ajo nitya shashvatam yam purano, nahanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul, there is never birth nor death at any time. We've never come into being. We're as eternal as anything, as God. And we're unborn, eternal, ever-existing, primeval. We are not slain when the body is slain. And there's many other verses on the same theme. So the question then becomes, because as we grow up in life, right, we get an education and we get an idea of our future. We want to do certain things, get an education, so that we can get a good job and get a good place in life. There's certain things we don't want to do, self-destructive habits, which you all know about, which we try to avoid, so that we'll have a better next life as we grow into ourselves. But if you project it further and further, and you realize, well, wait a minute, if I'm not going to die, when the body dies, it's not the end of my existence, what about my next life? How do I plan for that? And that's one of the essential themes of the Bhagavad Gita. We are making our destiny by what we do now. And what we experience now is also a result of things we've done in the past. Just like being born or just like living in SanDiego. Now, I didn't make a decision to come here. I've been doing this Hare Krishna thing for almost 50 years. But my service was here, so I live here now. But it's a highly coveted place for people to live, as you probably know. The weather is very nice, and you're by the ocean and so forth. And, you know, I mean, we were conscious of those forest fires, horrible fires, but that was in the northern part of the state, right? It didn't really touch us here. So it's kind of a charmed place, you know. So where you live, things that happen to you, good and bad, a lot of this is coming from previous life. But it's also a mix of what you're doing now. So it's very complicated. So what the whole Bhagavad Gita focuses on is, because it has a twofold role. One is the immediate task that Krishna has is to convince Arjuna to fight this battle, despite the fact that his friends are on the other side. It's for a higher purpose, because it's going to reinstitute Dharma, real Dharma in the world. Dharma being not religion. Religion is too restrictive of it. But adjusting things for the welfare of everyone in the world. If you can imagine if we were ruled, if the government was ruled by people who simply had the welfare of the people in mind. There was no selfish motive.
That would be a big change, wouldn't it? They try to convince you of that, wouldn't it, when they try to get your vote. I'm just here to serve you, you know. But then they have their own agenda, you know, and there's all kinds of things. Because for very many reasons. They're not practicing yoga. But anyway, so it's a very serious business. The fate of the world is involved. So that's the immediate proximate. But it's a larger instruction for every one of us. How we can live in this world to ensure our best future. And not just in this life, but in future lives. And what is that best future? The best future, the best outcome, is to not take birth again. Because taking birth in the body like we have, this material body, ensures suffering, ultimately. Now this pandemic has hit. Who expected this 2 years ago? Nobody, right? Suddenly everyone in the world is affected. And it seems, you know, it's dying down and it flares up again in different parts of the world. Everyone has become very conscious of it. So what is it really? It's a threat. It's a threat to everything we hope to enjoy and be, and you know, things like that. And I'm sure everyone knows, you know, it's had a big toll on people's emotional and mental health. A lot of people, you know, are very, very afraid. So the Bhagavad Gita teaches us this is what it means to be in the material world. Unpredictability. I remember when I moved here. I lived in Miami for 6 years, always working on books. I've been working, the very books that you're reading here, I had a hand in making them, fixing them up, printing them every year. So for 6 years, I lived in Miami. We had a temple there, a big temple on the beach. And I wasn't there to, you know, enjoy the beach. We had an office, and we're working on a big multi-volume book that we have, which is our basic book called the Bhagavad Purana. But there the dangers were different, you know. Hurricane blowing in South Florida, you know, in Miami. So every year during hurricane season from July through October or so, everyone became very aware of the weather report, you know. So, oh, this one is blowing up now, it's moving, you know, Cuba and everything, now you keep an eye on it. You know. Luckily while I was here, nothing hit directly, but the year I moved here, in '89, they had a major hurricane hit. And I remember calling, because I had friends there. I called up, are you you know, leaving the temple? Are you going to take shelter in you know, inland? Said, no, we're just praying to Krishna. I said, Prabhu, you know, I mean, that's, you know, Krishna giving you intelligence. Anyway, I swear, this is what happened. It's coming, because I'm looking at the map, you know, coming right at the temple, Miami Beach. And then the last, you know, half day, it swerved and went to South Florida and hit a direct hit on an Air Force base that never reopened. It actually wrecked that. So I was thankful that happened. I'm not going to claim divine intervention, you know, but it was very good fortune for the temple. So that's one of the what they call the threefold miseries that you have to suffer in this world. It's something we know very much about, although we don't think of it in that way. These are difficulties that come from adibautic. Adibautic means other living beings. It can be little bed bugs that are bothering you, mosquitoes, ticks. A friend of ours, who used to be part of the temple, bitten by a tick, and he got that Lyme disease, and it's chronic disease, you know, is debilitating. So that we all know that. Most times, the other living beings are other human beings. That happens a lot. Then there's the natural disasters. I was describing the hurricanes. Here we have the earthquakes. When I moved here, I immediately looked up, okay, what's the earthquake situation? Here, the San Andreas Fault, you know. Oh, I see it moves inland just before it hits SanDiego. Well, that's good. You know, that's lucky, you know, and all that. So what can you really do? You don't get a prediction like with a hurricane, right? You just have to pray and hope. I remember there was one, it was, I think, 94. It was up in Joshua Tree. I don't know if you're SanDiego people, but that's upstate a little bit in the desert. And it was a serious earthquake up there, but hardly anyone lives there, so no one was hurt. But we had, you know, I was upstairs. It's in the early morning we chant, and I was chanting on beads, like a rosary we do every year. And suddenly the whole building is shaking. And I should have run down and run into the temple to see how the deities were doing, but I ran out the door, and I'm on the sidewalk, and I'm like surfing. You know, I don't know if you've ever been in an earthquake. I didn't get it didn't happen long enough where I got terrified, you know. But it's such a powerful force, you know. It's humbling. It's humbling, you know. So these things happen, and this pandemic is, you know, like, is a virus alive? Maybe it's not adibautic, but it's adidaivic. Adidaivic means a natural disaster. Whatever it is, it's very powerful, and you know, you can't do anything. And then there's the adiatmic ones, which means that, you know, everything is fine, weather is fine, nobody's bothering you, you know. But, you know, yes, last night you got an email from somebody, and now you know you're wheeling and you're depressed, and your own mind and body are giving you trouble. So when you think about it, one or more of those is either always threatening us, or we're suffering from that, like that. And at a certain point, as you go through life, you know, you get a disease or something happens or an accident, and it's time to leave this body. So you have these fourfold miseries. On top of the three, you got birth, old age, disease, and death. They come generally in that order. And you can't get away from them. Even though now they say, now we've figured out how to reverse the aging process. Have you been reading the news? You know? Yeah, right. Well, anyway, even if they do that, they still got the other miseries they got to worry about. You know, what about the point is that eventually we have to leave this body. And you don't die. I have this little motto, you know. Every body dies. All bodies are going to die. Every body dies. Nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body. You're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. Now, what is that life's goal? This is what the Bhagavad Gita is filled with. The life's goal is to not just escape round of birth and death, but to regain our original life in, what do we call it? Paradise, Valhalla, the kingdom of God. You know, it's where there's no birth, no death, and there's no miseries. There's no threefold miseries. We're reinstated in our original position of Nityananda, eternal bliss. Now, in this lifetime, we all have these periods where we're experiencing happiness, sometimes great, intense happiness, bliss, and joy, you know. And really, we live for that. Sometimes, you know, all we want to do is sit down for a good meal, and that'll make us happy. Right? I mean, we eat certain things, you know, aside from that. That's one of the things. And we all have certain things that make us happy, but it's temporary. It's temporary. It comes and it goes, right? Now, you could say the miseries come and go, and that's true also. But what if there's a state of existence where the happiness doesn't have to end? You can say, yeah, that's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream in this life, when we have a material body, which is a fragile machine. You know, I'm 73 years old now. I just took my walk. I take a nice walk in the evening. I walk up the slight hill up here for half a mile, and I walk back down, chanting Hare Krishna. And I've been doing it now for, you know, maybe 6 months at least, you know. Feel pretty good. But suddenly, you know, I'm getting old. I got a pain in my foot. And I said, oh, now I'm in the middle of my walk, you know. So maybe I can walk it off. Luckily, I was able to walk it off, and you stop hurting. You know, it happens like that sometimes. But that's the nature of the body, is that we want to do something, we take for granted what we have, but at a certain point, it doesn't work anymore. You know, and you have to reconcile to that. So in our spiritual body, and this is what's promised here, is that this is a covering of our original spiritual body. There's no birth, no death, old age, all of that is gone. And every moment is filled with bliss, happiness, in relationship to this Supreme Lord, the God, who's speaking this Bhagavad Gita. And the wonderful thing is, this is our natural state. This is our original state. And we've lost touch with it. You know. So regaining that, the process of Bhakti Yoga helps us gradually to regain that state of consciousness, so we can leave this world successfully and not come back and be reinstated in our original consciousness. So part of that, now back to our chapter here, because I'm not sure how much you're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita. This chapter has, as I mentioned, two basic divisions. At the beginning of the chapter, Krishna comes to the point of speaking the 4 essential verses of the Bhagavad Gita, which we can recount, starting in 10.8. And we can just turn to 10.8. It's actually right after the color section in the page 429. And Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So right there it is a statement. Now we can believe it or not believe it, but in this what's Prabhupada calls the purport, which is his commentary, he quotes many other sources that are confirming this. So just to assume that it's true for now, and move on. And so then what are we going to do about that? He says, they worship me. How do they worship me? How do they relate to me? And he says, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service. And they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So this is what this Hare Krishna mantra is all about. Most of you have seen the chanting, the collective chanting, right? How we do that. This is called Sankirtan, is glorifying the Lord together in congregation. So that's the best way to chitta, to place the mind on Krishna. Because the name of God is infused with spiritual power. Let's put it that way. And especially this mantra is what do these words mean? Hare Krishna and Rama. Well, Krishna is the name for God, which means all attractive. All attractive. What are those attractions? The same attractions we find in this world. Wealth is very attractive. I remember there was some guy, I think he just died recently. He built up a tremendous, one of these multi-billionaires. Most of his money was made, talk about gambling, we've read about, running gambling houses in Macau, which is right off China, I think. There's an island there. Anyway, he made a lot of money. And he was a Jewish guy, and he gave a lot of money to Israel and this and that. But I swear, I have nothing against him personally. But he's one of the most ugly people. You know how it is sometimes? It just, some people... And but still, a lot of people wanted to talk to him. He was still attractive because of all those billions of dollars that he gave away. Some people have no money, but they're very attractive, and a lot of people want to talk to them, right? They're very attractive. So you have wealth, beauty, strength is attractive. People go to see the football players and the fighters and everything, physical strength, but also mental strength, is very attractive. And fame, and what is it? I should say something. Shriya and jnana, knowledge. Everyone knows the name of Einstein and Newton and all of these famous scientists, It's attractive. And then there's this other opulence which we're not so familiar with, but it's detachment. To have, be so self-situated that one is not dependent on anything else. And that this is an opulence in the Vedic culture anyway. So this holy name, this name of Krishna, means he who possesses these attractive features to the nth degree. That to more than anyone else, more beautiful, more wealthy and everything. And he defines that in this chapter. When he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo, I'm the source of everything, well, that's power right there. That means the most powerful and strong. So thinking of Krishna by chanting this name means becoming attracted to Krishna because, and this is a mystical thing that you just have to experience, the name of Krishna, of God, has God's potencies and will attract you. If you chant the name, and this chanting process is the best process in this age for meditation. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. We chant both on beads as a meditation and together singing and dancing, which is a very effective means of meditation. It doesn't feel like a meditation. It feels like a celebration, which it really is. So that's the name Krishna, the all-attractive Lord. The name Hare, how many of you have you seen Radha and Krishna together? Have you ever seen anything? I don't know how new you are. Anyway, if you stay after 7:15, the curtains will open and you'll see the deities there. So there's a pleasure potency energy that God has, personified as Radharani. And we actually belong to that. That's where the bliss comes from. By learning to serve Krishna and have reciprocal relationship with him like that. It's a little complicated, but it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So that Hare, when you say Hare Krishna, you're invoking the pleasure energy of the Lord, which means service, and you're praying, please let me serve you again. I've forgotten all these years, millions of births. We've been in going body to body, and not always human bodies. We're fortunate to have human bodies. It's a very special benediction. So please let me engage in your service again. Take me back to my original home, like that. And the word Rama is a name for Krishna that means the source of boundless happiness, experience happiness. So this is what we're chanting and meditating on, and it has a very purifying effect. So Gata Prana and serve me with all of your energies, and they get together and glorify me together. That's devotees experience that, and that keeps us enlivened. And then what does Krishna do on his side? That's text 10. For those who are always linked to me, yukta is related to the word yoga. In this bhakti yoga, worshipping me with love and devotion, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. Now this is a very important point, that it's not that God is remote and we're here. He's within us as well, as a super soul. And he's giving us intelligence to do what we want to do. And if we want to progress in bhakti yoga, he'll give us the intelligence to do that. Just like something inspired you to come here and have a Bhagavad Gita class, right? The lucky 8, here you are. And there's another few out there. Welcome, Hare Krishna. Out of millions and millions and millions of people, we're sitting here, thinking about Bhagavad Gita. So from within, Krishna's appreciative. He's giving the intelligence. He's, inspiring, and inspired you to come to here. So I give the intelligence by which to come to me, and then the last of these 4 verses, essential verses, with the shining lamp of knowledge, I destroy the darkness of ignorance. Our ignorance of who we are and our relationship to God, and how to reawaken that relationship, this ignorance keeps us bound here. Just like on a material level, we know that if we're able to get a good education, just like my friend here is IT, right, information technology specialist. So sometimes I consult him or this friend Tapas. We have several about my computer, because I've been using computers for a long time, but I don't know how they work so well. The innards of them. And so if there's some problem, I say, Tapas, can you help me? I got a problem. And that knowledge gives him strength, and he can fix it so I can go on with my work. So knowledge is so important, and Krishna is giving that knowledge from within of how inspiring us to do this, don't do that, go here, And so he's saying there, I destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So Krishna wants us to, come back home, back to Godhead, and he's telling us. And then Arjun, he acknowledges Krishna's supremacy in the next few verses. And then he asks him, after a few verses, he said, now please enlighten me so I know how to meditate on you in this world, how I can see you. And this is for us. Whatever we see that's very great and impressive, like the ocean, is very good. Krishna says, I'm that. Know that I'm in there, and that the greatness is just reflecting my greatness. So he gives a whole list here. Now, whatever is very powerful, very beautiful, very impressive, we should train the mind so that reminds us of Krishna. It's reflecting just a spark of Krishna's splendor, of God's splendor. And this way, we learn to see the whole world as divine. It really is divine. And ourselves as the servants of the divine, you see. And that actually creates a tremendous amount of peace and happiness. Even in the midst of this cataclysm of this pandemic, one can be at peace and confident, especially if you have your association of devotees. This temple is a wonderful boon. And so that's what is happening here. And we've been reading now. We just read, what was the number of the verse? 36, right? So he's giving different qualities here. Now, gambling on cheats, of the splendid I am splendid. There's always splendid things around. The sun, for instance, he mentions that also. I'm victory, I'm adventure, and I'm strength of the strong. So with this chapter and other chapters it's mentioned, we can begin to see the world and see ourselves through the eyes of Shastra. The Shastra means the scripture that we study here. And that helps us to purify our existence and cultivate Krishna consciousness, because the test comes when we finally leave this body. Nobody dies, but we're going to leave the body at a certain point, and what our state of consciousness is will determine our next life. If it's full of God consciousness, we'll go to God. We won't have to come back again to this material world. You know, I don't know about you, but the way this world is going, I mean, it doesn't look like it's very hopeful, you know. I mean, we have a good chance now to make this our last birth, so that's what we should be focusing on. All right, if there's any questions or comments, we can entertain them now. Otherwise, we'll go on. Okay, let's do one more. At least. Text 37. Vishinam Vasudevosmi Pandavanam Dhananjayaha Muninam Apyaham Vyasa Kavinam Ushana Kavihi. Of the descendants of Vrishni, I am Vasudev, and of the Pandavas, I am Arjun. He's speaking to Arjun. That's interesting. Of the sages, I am Vyas, and among great thinkers, I am Ushana. Purport. Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Baladev is Krishna's immediate expansion. Both Lord Krishna and Baladev appeared as sons of Vasudev. So both of them may be called Vasudev. Notice the little mark on top of the A. It changes the pronunciation and the meaning. From another point of view, because Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, all the forms of Krishna that appear elsewhere are his expansions. Vasudev is Krishna's immediate expansion, so Vasudev is not different from Krishna. It is to be understood that the Vasudev referred to in this verse of the Bhagavad Gita is Baladev, or Balaram, because he is the original source of all incarnations, and thus he is the sole source of Vasudev. The immediate expansions of the Lord are called Svanksha, personal expansions, and there are also expansions called Vibhinangsha, separated expansions. Amongst the sons of Pandu, Arjuna is famous as Dhananjaya. Dhananjaya means conqueror of wealth. And he is the best of men and therefore represents Krishna. Among the Munis, or learned men conversant in Vedic knowledge, Vyas is the greatest because he explained Vedic knowledge in many different ways for the understanding of the common mass of people in this age of Kali. And Vyas is also known as an incarnation of Krishna. Therefore, Vyas also represents Krishna. Kavis are those who are capable of thinking thoroughly on any subject matter. Among the Kavis, Ushana, Shukracharya, was the spiritual master of the demons. He was an extremely intelligent and far-seeing politician. Thus, Shukracharya is another representative of the opulence of Krishna. So there's a lot could be said about each one of these points. When we started the class, you may have, if it's the first time you're here, you may forget what we said, but we always say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is a standard prayer, which means Om, you know, the sacred syllable. Namo, I offer obeisances, respects, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, who is named Vasudev. So Vasudev is also a name for Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, and that's mentioned here. So that's we glorify Vasudeva every day, and this is a way of expanding our understanding of who Krishna is. And the Pandavas, as I mentioned, those are Arjun's 4 brothers plus Arjun, 5 of them, and they're very exalted, all of them. They're great warriors. Bhima is very, very powerful, and Yudhishthira is very, very virtuous, Dharma personified, the son of the king of the demigod in charge of Dharma, Yamaraj. And the 2 other brothers were also very exalted. So they personify this Dharma that Krishna wants to reinstate. And Vyasadeva, well, he's very involved or intrinsic to our practice. He wrote this book, He wrote the Bhagavad Gita as part of the Mahabharata. He spoke that, wrote it down. And he also compiled what we call the 4 Vedas, which are very, they have different characteristics. Part of them are the Upanishads, you may have heard of. And they all contain this spiritual knowledge that I'm summarizing here. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita is often called the Gita Upanishad because it summarizes the philosophy. The whole idea of the Bhagavad Gita is to give you a very, it's only 700 verses. I remember my first Bhagavad Gita was way back in 1972. I was curious about spiritual things. I didn't know much about anything. And so I got a little Bhagavad Gita, a paperback. I don't think it had any commentary, maybe a few sentences. And it's only 700, verses. I mean, 700 sentences. That's not very long. So I read through it, and it was intriguing, but I had no idea really what I was supposed to do from that, The whole idea is the Bhagavad Gita is on several levels a normative work, which means it's meant to guide you in your life. It's not just a book, of different philosophies or something. It's normative. And Arjuna, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he says to Krishna, I will do as you say. In other words, he surrenders and he fights, even though he has to fight against his teacher and his friends and his cousins. So we're also meant to come to the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, which is basically to surrender to Krishna, to realize that our best interest lies in reestablishing that relationship. And that will require a certain process which needs guidance, and therefore we need a guru, and we need an environment, that we can do it. It doesn't have to be in the temple here. I don't live in the temple. 2 boys live in the temple. Most of you live outside. But you can make your home into a favorable place, where you can also practice yoga. I remember when I started practicing yoga, I was living alone. I didn't know anything about Hare Krishna. But I started with the Hatha Yoga. Most of you are familiar with that. For most people in America, if you say yoga, they say, yeah, there's a yoga studio right down the street. I go down there sometimes and loosen up, That's fine. That's fine. That's what I did. But I was into it. I was serious about it. And I would have my, every morning I would do my asanas, and on the weekend I would go to the studio and, like that. And I became a vegetarian. And I was just curious because of the yoga culture, and I was meeting various people. And so I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is very big in the 60s. I started in the early 70s. And other things, and I remember seeing the book of the Upanishads in the library. It was pretty formidable. It was like a bunch of thick green books, I just opened it up and said, well, put that back. And I didn't really know what I was doing, But I was fortunate to come in touch with the devotees. And from chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, it just worked. I just became attracted to Krishna. Especially, I have to confess, I was a flute player for years. I went on the street. I would play on the street, with, like that. And when I saw Krishna standing there playing the flute, I said, "Oh, this is God. This is interesting," because I already have a certain affinity. It was something. It intrigued me. Let's put it that way. But really, what was important was the book. Not this book. I didn't get the Bhagavad Gita first, but I got another book about the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is also Krishna. He appeared only 535 years ago or so, and he's the one who established this easy process of meditation, and this dancing and chanting, in jubilation, and then followed by, if you get into it, you get tired, you get hungry, prasadam, which is wonderful vegetarian food offered to the Lord. It's also spiritual. So anyway, I became attracted to that, and I started chanting and meditating on Hare Krishna. I had a job. I had a bank account, a car, a little apartment, and everything. But I was chanting. And eventually, I got to the point where I decided what I really want to do is chant. It was mostly the chanting. And so I joined, back in 73. And never looked back. So I was fortunate because I got that book, I read the book, and I was intrigued by the philosophy, and it's very important. And I also was able to get a service where I could work on the books, which I always found very fulfilling, So to this day, I've been doing that. I'm still doing it. Okay, any final questions or comments? Anything from internet land? Tapas, Dandavat Pranams.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam. Thank you for a nice class.
Hare Krishna.
We have 14 people watching right now, but we don't have any questions or comments.
14 plus 8, 22, 23.
14 plus 1 in...
Well, that's the watching out there. I'm talking about right in here. There's 8 people sitting here, and then we have 9, which is a big crowd for us. So anyway, I'll give you a little poem, because I write some poetry. So it is said, let's see. So here's a poem that was written by Lord Chaitanya, a verse describing the benefits of chanting. I'll spare you the Sanskrit. The first line, Cheto darpanamarjanam bhavamahadavagni nirvapanam. The Sanskrit is very metrical and beautiful. This English goes like this. All glories to the chanting of Sri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. That chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge which will take us to life's goal, the chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's names are sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Sri Krishna's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. And on that note, we'll adjourn and prepare for kirtan. If you could spend a few minutes with us, the curtains will open and we'll chant Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Haribol.